Hello there, this is Doc Popter. Welcome to the second of my video essays. And this one's all about the long and partly forgotten history of the video album, the forerunner or whatever of the visual album. And this is very much a story of the future. Or at least the future of 1982, when hey it was former Monkey turned music video pioneer Michael Nesmith making his grand speculations.
Years ago, 1976, when I decided that I wasn't going to make any more audio records, I was going to make video records.
The video record he made in 1981, Michael Nesmith and Elephant's Parts, combined music videos with sketch comedy and commercial spoofs. Let's face it, the audiovisual utopia where all albums are visual, it's never going to arrive. But we have seen a remarkable upsurgence of video albums, visual albums, video records, whatever you want to call them, and it's a good opportunity to look at why. But in the early 1980s, we didn't know any of what was to come. There were competing systems of VHS, Betamax, Philips Video 2000, and then Laserdisc, all looking like they might possibly be the future of entertainment, and trying to embrace music.
Uniquely so. Yes.
In November 1979, Billboard magazine introduced the first video sales chart, which was refreshingly full of soft porn, and steadily increased their coverage of video-related articles. Fast forward 32 years, and there's a story circulating about Kanye West, who was reportedly upset because he'd had the idea to do a visual album first for Dark Twisted Fantasy, but he'd been trumped by his rival Beyonce, with Beyonce. This story has never been properly confirmed, and it's very possibly an example of fake news clickbait. But the point is, the widespread perception that Beyonce as a visual album was in itself somehow a first of its kind is really misleading, and ignores a tradition that goes back at least to Blondie's Eat to the Beat, proclaimed as the first video album in Billboard back in 1979, and I would argue even further back to 1972 with a film from Serge Gainsbourg. We'll also take a good long look at Annie Lennox later, as I talk through this history and how it's been erased. I'll be providing plenty of other examples, some of which you'll have heard about, and plenty of others that you probably haven't. I'm also going to argue up front that there's no fundamental difference between video album and visual album, so I'll be using video album consistently even when discussing Beyonce. Sorry, not sorry. And there's plenty of other terminology floating around, like iamamiwhoami's audio-visual album for example. Soft Cell's Non-Stop Exotic video show from '82 was a video special. Olivia Newton-John's Olivia Physical, made for a budget of $500,000, was referred to as a concert, even though it obviously doesn't look anything like one. Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams the video album from 1983 is a miscellany with all kinds of stuff on it, assembling in-concert performance, conceptual video clips, and animation woven together in a fabulous album. Confusingly, Billy Joel the video album Volume 2 was a live concert. I mean, really sort it out, guys. As a side note, arcane meanings of the word album are closer to this idea of a box of miscellaneous stuff, i.e. its historic use as an empty container used for storing 78 RPM singles, as Di Griffiths points out. And how many have there been over the years in total? Well, it's impossible to say. It's difficult to classify them. There are probably quite a few examples outside the Anglo-American market that are hard to discover, like in Japan, and then new ones keep appearing all the bloody time. So, let's get a bit geeky and work on some classification. My criteria, and feel free to pull me apart on the internet here, are the following. 1. First and foremost, a video album is an accompaniment to a recorded as opposed to live music equivalent. However, you might find one indivisible package of music and image, e.g. Animal Collective's Oddsack 2010 or Frank Ocean's Endless last year. Others like Green Jelly's Serial Killer in 1991 even came before releases of audio-only material. 2. Ideally, every track on the album should have some video content created for it, but then in practice we'll find many video albums only use the majority of an album or include bits and pieces from other releases like non-album singles and B-sides, etc. Can we agree though that at least 75% of the tracks on the album should be represented visually for the two forms to be considered versions of each other? Can we? Good. Then we can discount REM's otherwise lovely Left of Reckoning from '84, which uses music from only the first side of the Reckoning album. 3. Complete audio tracks should generally be used rather than shorter clips. This discounts Dirty Projector's High Custodian film from 2012. 4. A video album should also be available somehow as a single unit. However, as technology changes, this might mean a television show, a physical format like VHS or DVD, some kind of playlist, like Justin Bieber's Purpose the Movement in 2015. The overwhelming emphasis must be on musical performances, but we might find some non-musical connecting material as interstitials, i.e. stills, skits, segues, opening or closing sequences, etc.
Welcome to Culture Corner. And as I've always said, there's nothing like art, and this is nothing like art.
This helps to differentiate video albums definitively from narrative films that have musical performance, like The Beatles' Help in '65. I'm also going to posit a pure video album where the same songs on the album are represented on the video album with no omissions or additions, though the original tracklist need not be preserved, and that's pretty common. And then there's the question of directors. There could be one, a team, or multiple directors. Sometimes there's a competition for different directors to bid for each clip right at the conceptual heart of the project, like Death Cab for Cutie's Plans in 2006, or Sigur Ros's Valtteri mystery film experiment in 2012. Right, that's the geek part over with. It's time to go back in time. But how far back shall we go? To the first films that have music performance in them, like The Jazz Singer? Okay, let's not do that. But do go and read John Mundy if you want more on the history of music in television or in the movies in Britain and America. There is something about television as the cradle of the video album I want to look at though, particularly late 60s TV specials like Brigitte Bardot's Spécial Bardot, directed by her then husband Roger Vadim, who also directed Barbarella. Look at this. It's amazing, isn't it? And this. The Bardot show has around an hour of mostly uninterrupted music performances like this. It's a bit like a video album, but without the album to connect to. Do also check out some of the scholarship on forerunners to music in France like this book. It didn't all just happen in Britain and America, you know. Anyway, a few years later, in 1975, Alice Cooper was doing this. He turned songs on his album Welcome to My Nightmare into a television special, which was essentially a translation of the theatrics of his stage show. This is obviously really different from The Beatles' Help, but perhaps this is less to do with formal devices that structure the plot and action, and more to do with the locus of the television studio. Here, the familiar elements of sets, presenters, audience relations, and even camera moves are defined by the space itself. It's partly the escape from the TV studio onto the soundstage and into the wider vistas of the outside world that helped to usher in the new music video era. Just compare Duran Duran's exotic travelogues for the Rio album with proto-music videos like Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. But it's an even earlier work, Serge Gainsbourg's Histoire de Mélodie Nelson, French TV special from 1972, that gets there first. Yes, he made an entire film out of an album. Does that make it a video album? Well, it does also uncannily foreshadow the aesthetics of music video and how these can be used for a new, narratively ambiguous kind of long-form storytelling. So I'd say yes. The images were captured with the still new technology of videotape. Here's the director for the project, Jean-Christophe Averty, who was one of the pioneers of digital media, having conducted experiments like Alice in Wonderland, screened on French television in 1970. What's notable here is how he uses early blue screen, aka chroma key, technology, jarringly juxtaposing different elements with elaborate overlays and acid colours. Isolating the performer means they can then be superimposed over any background desired, whether drawn or using other video-enhanced backdrops. This is really important in later music video practices. The dreamlike visual world we can enter this way was previously only achievable using animation, as with the Beatles' Yellow Submarine in 1968. Melody Nelson has a story about an aging rock star who meets a young ingenue when his Rolls-Royce crashes into her bicycle. The couple begin an affair, left tragically unconsummated when Melody dies soon after in a plane crash. But by telling the story through the medium of music video, it emerges as radically different from anything that had been seen before, and it's far from being a simple linear narrative. There are repetitive visual motifs that draw us deeper into the story, and these can be interpreted as having a deeper structure of circularity. Darren Anderson sees this as a story about purgatory, like the concentric circular constructions of hell in Dante's Inferno. In his interpretation, Gainsbourg is a god-cursed tragedian of ancient myth, forever reenacting the cause of his heartbreak, forever finding and losing melody in a Möbius time loop. And I'd argue the music sounds like this too, with a looping 2-bar chord sequence over which Herbie Flower's electric bass pattern improvises. This becomes increasingly intricate, but never repeats the same 2-bar pattern twice. How are music videos different from cinema though? Well, more ways than I can go into here, so go and see scholars like Andrew Goodwin and Carol Vernalis. Vernalis argues that by avoiding the satisfying rhythm of concealment and discovery so crucial to film narrative, music video holds the viewer at bay. It's therefore difficult to access a teleological mode of viewing, i.e. predicting one outcome over another. And this is what we see going forward as the dawn of the video album arrives and they start becoming more numerous. As I've stated, Blondie kind of got there first to Eat to the Beat, or maybe they didn't, because British band ELO did one at around exactly the same time with Discovery, which hoped to sell a load of cassettes to the American market. Others came from new wave bands like The Tubes and Devo. And a little later, more mainstream acts got in on the act, like Olivia Newton-John and even Elton John. Both of them were nominated for the new Grammy Award for Video of the Year, set up in 1982 to recognise the potential of these new long-form music films. Why bother making a video album though? And how would you make your money back if you made one? Blondie's cost a reported $130,000 back when there wasn't even an MTV to screen it on, and Olivia Newton-John's cost $500,000. You could sell the cassettes at $60 a pop, or even sell it to pay TV networks to screen, but that's maybe not going to be a lot of viewers. In the early days, video albums would also get screened in clubs, and even got shown, like the Tubes one, instead of the opening act in live concerts. And this replacement for live appearance where they might come in handy. Just like Queen made their Bohemian Rhapsody video so they didn't have to go on top of the pops every week when the record was #1 for 9 weeks, the video album could theoretically replace a tour by fulfilling this promotional function. ELO didn't bother touring their Discovery album, perhaps that's why they made theirs. Annie Lennox was sick of going on the road after Eurythmics' 1986 tour and has stated that this was a motivation for theirs. Matt Johnson of The simply didn't tour at all in his early years and saw the ambitious Infected as a way for him to boost his profile and visual identity. Infected, made in 1986, is one of the more serious-minded and conceptually ambitious video albums, and it's music video's version of Werner Herzog's Fitzcarraldo in a way. It cost Johnson £350,000 to make, by the way, and he's still paying it back. One of my favourites, Soft Cell's non-stop exotic video show from '82, simply emerges out of chaos at the peak of their hit-making with no brilliant career strategy. According to Mark Armand, coping with the grueling schedule of the week-long filming involved large quantities of amphetamines. Armand feels it was way ahead of its time, and I tend to agree with him. Sex Dwarf, the original music video Nasty, was the subject of a brief but intense tabloid furore when details of the shoot were leaked to the press, involving dwarves, transsexuals, meat and a chainsaw. The video album, in the UK at least, arrived partly via scandal and notoriety. By 1988, home video cassette sales were on the up, and had doubled over the previous year. Billboard called it a new day in the waking, quaking world of the once sleeping giant. And this was also the year that Eurythmics' Savage came out, perhaps the best and most enduring of the post-Blondie releases. The media loved it, and suggested the video album might finally be coming of age. In the UK, a video cassette would generally cost £9.99, much cheaper than at the start of the decade, and this was at a time when the CD was £12.99. You can see the potential appeal for consumers. Annie Lennox portrays several characters in the videos, including a mousy, frustrated housewife and an extrovert blonde vamp, who is coded partially as a female drag queen, or transsexual, as Lennox would refer to her in interviews. It becomes clear the more videos you watch that these characters are multiple aspects of a single woman, possibly being portrayed as suffering from multiple personality disorder. Characters pop up in other videos, intersecting and interacting with each other, as well as other personae closer to Lennox herself, like a teenage version of herself. Or is it? The teenager's mother. Or is it? It gets more complex the more you think about it, and there are also representations of Lennox's stage persona knocking around in there for good measure. Are all of these characters and personae sharing a diegetic space? It's not really clear. And should we interpret the whole space of the video album as a narrative one in the first place? Also not clear. For Vernalis, this is one of the strengths of the video album. Discussing Beyonce, she feels the work will shimmer, suggesting multiple possibilities, unlike the Hollywood film, which provides viewers with few remaining options at the end. This shimmering quality is equally so for Savage, and when Vernalis describes Beyonce as a work without true precursors, I have to say stop, wait a minute. What about Annie Lennox? Like Beyonce's Lemonade, Savage gives the audience conflicting signs about the artist and their persona. There's a conflict between reality and a projection of reality that's key when it comes to interpreting the infidelities portrayed in Lemonade. Did Jay-Z cheat on Beyonce? Or is she exploiting rumour for her own financial gain? And there's something of this in Savage too. Which of these Lennoxes is the real one? Is it this one or this one? Or are all these personae some kind of extension of the performer that we can ultimately never get to know? This extreme complexity around persona is an affordance of the long form which could never occur to quite the same extent within the more limited scope of a single music video. And this is another reason why I think the video album has such potential. The next part of the story is all about technological change. We see the DVD arrive in 1995, but it's not really so different from the Laserdisc in how you can jump around the disc. Video albums can encourage continuous viewing, like Enigma's 1990 The Complete Video Album, which is framed as a guided meditation, or they can be episodic, like Daft Punk's Interstellar 5555, The Story of the Secret Star System, released to DVD in 2003. This is an anime-style story about a talented alien pop group who are kidnapped and brought to Earth to be brainwashed and technologically modified by a sinister pop Svengali, which, as animation, is way more outlandish than anything that could be achieved in previous video albums. What's interesting about Daft Punk's is, had it been put out a few years later, after YouTube appeared in 2005, it could have made for a gripping serial narrative, with cliffhangers and viewers feverishly waiting for the next episode to be uploaded. Kind of like R. Kelly's YouTube rap opera Trapped in the Closet, but, a lot more exciting and not an unintentional comedy. Talking about serials, the rise of the serial novel in Victorian times has been connected with the convergence of key phenomena during the Industrial Revolution, things like technological advances in printing, an improved economics of distribution, and the rise of literacy. With YouTube, there are parallels with other types of convergence. Technological advances rapidly bringing down the cost of high-grade cameras and editing software, a revolutionized economics of distribution via the internet, and a new, arguably more democratic, type of digital literacy for a digital age. And this is where iamamiwhoami come in with their music video serial for Bounty during 2009 and 2010. The videos were uploaded to their YouTube channel and promoted via selected music blogs with no context provided for the identity or nationality of the artist. This led to an explosion of internet speculation. Some people thought she might be Lady Gaga or Christina Aguilera before she was eventually revealed as Swedish former solo act Jonna Lee. And then there was a simultaneous revelation that the group was a multimedia collective comprising a music producer, video director, photographer and art director responsible for the sets, costumes and makeup used in the videos. Both the visuals and the music have dreamlike qualities that defy easy interpretations. And, I would argue, the presence of only minimal interpretive clues means the audio viewer is lured into a mode of interpretation, i.e. what the hell is this all about? And sure enough, interpretations circulated on YouTube and a variety of other sites where users could exchange comments, activating a collective interpretive intelligence that philosopher Pierre Levy would point out and say, I told you that was going to happen. How did the videos get made though, given that attempts weren't made to commercialise the videos and music until 2013, 4 years later? And how much does a video album cost to make anyway today? For clues, I'm going to turn to UK hip-hop artist The Last Skeptic, who made his video album Thanks for Trying for Peanuts in 2013. The largest budget of the whole project was £500 for the outdoor shoot of the fantastic Pick Your Battles video. Others were shot for as little as £50, but when I interviewed him, he wouldn't tell me which ones, to protect the director's modesties. How does such good quality work get made so cheap though? Well, the directors are all within a network of creative contacts, who The Last Skeptic also considers friends. This system of favours means he can pay back the work by DJing at his collaborators' weddings or connecting them with other contacts for paid work. And this is similar to how Isaac Gale, who co-directed many of the videos for the Bon Iver Deluxe Edition video album, is also a musician whose band's 2013 album featured a quid pro quo guest appearance from Bon Iver's Justin Vernon. This and the multimedia collective approach that spawned iamamiwhoami's videos are part of a new economic paradigm for music videos, where we're clearly witnessing a radically transformed economics of production. Beyoncé, on the other hand, spent a reported $1.3 million or so on Lemonade. Now that's quite a lot, but nowhere near the $5 to $6 million that the most expensive single videos like Madonna's Bedtime Story have cost. It's been speculated that thanks to her investment in Tidal and the high pricing of $17.99 on iTunes, she was at one point making $3 million per day from streaming and downloads of Lemonade, so I would guess she's doing okay. I'm not here to diss Beyoncé though, really I'm not. Beyoncé and Lemonade are both outstanding pieces of work. But are they really as revolutionary as the media and some scholars would have you believe? Was it Beyoncé's content that made it so noteworthy, or its sudden, unexpected delivery onto the market? And how have we been tricked into this erasure of the past, where Beyoncé becomes the undisputed queen of the visual album, innovator supreme? Michael Hann, former editor of The Guardian, feels in the current music climate, there's a new hegemony of poptimism, where pop's sacred cows, like Beyonce, and their cultural significance are now beyond challenging. This might be true in the media, but hopefully less so among scholars who are often critical of how Beyonce as a feminist, political activist and musician can operate as a site of dubious branding, indivisible from capitalist modes of production. Okay, we've come to the end now, and I've dug into at least some of the history of the video album. And I hope I've demonstrated that perhaps it's a good idea to try and avoid the kind of misleading hyperbole surrounding Beyonce and others. This kind of thing perpetuates star-making myths through a virtual or vicious circle, depending on how you want to see it, of internet commentary. There's a lot more work to be done on the video album, so I'm hoping to get a few things published on it, where some of the issues explored here become clearer. Until then, this has been Doc Popter signing off. Please don't forget to hit subscribe.